Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we'll be working on my blaster right here. I've got a media blaster that I'm gonna be turning into a vapor blaster using some parts and some other stuff I got on Amazon. So stay tuned. So I've got this Harbor Freight media blaster I got for like $110 about 5 years ago. I did a couple videos of me doing some upgrades on here. Using it as a regular media blaster is just noisy, loud, and gets really dusty and dirty. So I want to convert this into a vapor blaster, basically still using the same media but with some water running through it. So on today's video, we'll be taking it apart, kind of opening up the bottom and then re-plumbing it for the new vapor blaster that I'm going to be doing. Some of the stuff I did before was this dust collection system right here that I did off the side right here. On the inside, I sealed it up when I got it just to make sure I didn't get any of the stuff to come out of here when I'm blasting. I still kept the original gun. I had to redo the hose with the PVC hose because a lot of my media was getting stuck, so I created my own little tube right there. The old OEM tube, which is just 2 tubes in one, is right there. I just use that to stir up everything in there. So what we're gonna do is just go ahead and clean this out. It's originally just a bench top one, but I ended up putting it right here on this cart. This is a $50 cart from Harbor Freight, so I'm gonna go ahead and just take this thing off of here. I'm gonna end up having to use this bottom part for all the new vapor blasting, water and pump and everything on the bottom. You notice inside for my vacuum system, I used that PVC to kind of aim it down so I wasn't picking up too much stuff just going straight in from the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to keep that with the new blasting kit. I still want to use the vacuum to suck up the vapors and the mist and stuff out of the thing, but I also don't want it to suck up too much of the media or anything to get into the vacuum. To build this vapor blaster, we're gonna be using this Vevor 1 horsepower pump right here. This thing's basically a sludge pump or a dirty water pump. It's used mainly to transfer dirty water or the bottom of a pond or something out, or to drain something. It's capable of doing about 67 gallons per minute. So we'll go ahead and test this thing out in my pool and see how much power it sprays out or how good it flows. It should be perfectly fine for our project on doing this vapor blaster, but I'll go ahead and test this outside just to see. Overall, this is your typical sump pump type pump. It comes with a float right here that if it goes down like this, it shuts off, and it's mainly to make sure that the pump is submerged if you're using it in an application where you're trying to drain something. So you want to have that as a safety so you don't burn it out. It comes with a long ass cord. I think that's like 20 or 30 feet with a cord there, so there's got plenty of line for you to pull it wherever you need to pull. We're out here in the pool. We'll go ahead and test this Vevor pump to see how far it shoots or how strong it is. Yeah, so that thing shot everywhere. So if we get it into the lower part where we have it actually submerged and then put a hose on here, it's gonna get the most pump and prime. When we get it right here, I think the water level's too low, so it has to be up here above this guy. Well, you can see that thing can move some serious water, and that's some pretty serious pressure if you were using this pump for anything else. So for our application, this is going to be perfect to make that vapor blaster out of the sandblast cabinet. Other materials we're going to need is some hose. So I got this 1/2 inch inner diameter, 3/4 inch outer diameter tube. It's a braided tube for reinforcement, so we're going to be using this as our primary tube to pump the slurry from the bucket up into the gun. Next, we're going to be using this particular gun here. This is just your generic $40 gun that you get on Amazon. It's nothing fancy. It should do the job for what I'm doing. I've seen some others sell like 3D printed ones and custom made ones for like $200 or $250. I think that's pretty much overkill for what I need. So basically you put the main slurry through this hole right here, and then the bottom hole I think is for the air. Or is it the other way around? Maybe the top hole's for, no, I think the top hole's for the air, the bottom hole's for the slurry, and I think it just mixes it all right here and it comes out. So what you want to do is you want to also be able to control your air. So I got a foot pedal, a pneumatic foot pedal that has regular 1/2-inch NTP fittings right here. So these things will basically allow you to supply air straight to the gun right there using your foot. I want to be able to regulate the air going in here from my air supply. So I bought just a regular regulator right here. If you already have one laying around, you could just use that. But I'm going to be using this to maintain the air from the wall to my unit. And then you're going to need a bunch of miscellaneous fittings right here. So I got the regular barb fittings right here to do the fitting from the pump up to the gun. And then I need a separate one to kind of stir everything around. The rest of these are just clamps and other fittings for the air hoses. It's just my bag of different fittings I use around the garage when I'm doing air projects. So these are just to connect air hoses and all that, but we'll go ahead and use this stuff. Everything I use, I'll go ahead and link down in the description so you guys can kind of build your own too and know exactly what to buy. So for my setup right here, this is how you drain the media inside. It's not one of those open bottom ones. It's got this thing and then a little drain on the side. So that's gonna make the actual vapor blasting a little bit more difficult. It won't really stop us. We could always cut this thing open and have it straight down, or somehow get the fluid to come out of here and flow out of here down into the basket or the bucket when we build it. So we'll deal with that once we empty this thing out. So right now I'm gonna go ahead and empty this into a bucket. Alright, I was able to clear everything out. I ended up just scooping it from the inside because that little hole took too long. Plus that thing, I couldn't get the thing completely out, so I had to unscrew the fitting when I emptied it out and was able to get in there. But now that I got everything cleared out of here, I ended up taking off that little piece of protectant on the inside of here. So I'm gonna go ahead and wash all this stuff out outside, clear out all the old material in here and everything, and get all the dust out, so I'm gonna have a clean area to work with, just because all this media is just dusty as hell in here. Now we got it all cleaned out and dried out, I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole right down the center here with a step bit to get that hole up to like 1 inch or 1.5 inch opening, so I can have it drain straight down. I want to have it with a hole, so later on if I decide to use this as a regular sandblaster again, I could just plug that hole with a standard circle or plug that I can screw into there, or I can convert it into like a bottom feed or a separate feed to get the media out of there better. So I went ahead and drilled the pilot hole right there, and since there's not much room because of this angle, I'm about to lay this thing on the side and drill it from the side with a step bit, so that way I could get it as big as possible. Not quite centered because I didn't drill the pilot hole right in the center, but we were able to take this up to 1 3/8 inch right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up with a deburring tool right there just to clean it up. Probably end up putting some touch-up paint there so it doesn't corrode, but we have a nice opening right now for the water to flow down when we're doing the vapor blasting. Since I had everything opened up and cleaned up, I went ahead and recocked all the seams. All my old caulk was kind of wearing out, and this is just a preventative measure just to make sure there was no leaks. When I was cleaning it, there was a little leak in that corner right there where I was losing some media and it was falling to the bottom, so I sealed that hole up in that corner where that black is, and also on the back side. Other than that, I cleaned up everything. I replaced my little protector right here on the glass by taking the glass out and doing all that, and then sealed up the vacuum port, and then sealed up the top of this port. This is your fresh air intake. I want it to come in, go down instead of going up to the top, so I want to go ahead and clean that all up. So this is pretty much good right now as far as all the prep for the old blast cabinet. I'm gonna go ahead and modify that thing now to get this thing on top. I'm gonna remove the bottom shelf right here and then have that bucket at the bottom where my pump and my slurry is gonna sit on the bottom level right here. Excuse this mess right now. I'm kind of using it as a table as I'm cleaning out and doing stuff, but right here on this top deck where this thing sits, I'm about to drill a hole right here in the middle. And I ended up buying this little $5-6 Amazon drain right here. It's just a sink drain. The reason why I got it is because I wanted to drill a hole here. I didn't want to leave a jagged edge. Plus this thing acts as a filter. Another reason why I chose this thing too, it takes a 3-inch opening right here to kind of get it in there. And then it has this thing where I can kind of wedge it between this metal right here when I drill the hole. So like I said, there's gonna be no jagged edges. Plus this bottom right here is just a standard sink fitting. So what I want to do is I want to have like some kind of pipe that goes down to the bucket that I can unscrew and screw on pretty easily, because I want that water to go right into the bucket without splashing all over under my feet and all that. So it makes a cleaner install, and it also helps direct the water straight down. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and drill this thing to put that sink thing that I was showing you earlier. That thing right here, that big flange, it's a 3-inch flange, but if you cut a 3-inch hole, it's not gonna fit. You need a little bit bigger than that. So I'm gonna cut a 3.5, because that's the next one I have up from 3-inch. So I'm gonna drill it straight down the middle here, penetrate that, and then kind of put this drain so it can have like a lip. Then I'm gonna get that pipe from the bottom there. It's like a $2 pipe that extends down into my bucket after that. All right, from one cheap China metal to another cheap China metal. This thing right here, all the teeth are actually getting worn out. I'm gonna have to find another way just to cut it, maybe with a grinder, just to get the edge started, because it's not really penetrating barely anything. It's just kind of wearing away this cheap drill bit that's probably only designed for wood and drywall, because this thing definitely is not designed for metal. So drilling some pilot holes and just using some snips made it quicker and easier to cut this out. So I just gotta clean up this thing. So I drilled that second hole right here for my pipe to come up. That's the slurry pipe. I ended up getting this thing right here, which is just a little plumbing fitting that fit perfectly into here so I don't scratch it. So it's got the threads on the side. You could lock it with another end, or you just leave it like this and then have your hose come through. It also keeps the water from going down this hole and forces the drain here if you put the other end in to make this thing tight. All right, so I removed that middle deck right there that we don't need anymore. And I ended up putting this big old bucket right here. So the beauty of using this bucket, or just even a 5-gallon bucket, is you could always take it out depending on the grit that you're using, and then just put a cap on it, maybe put some chlorine in it just to make sure the water doesn't go bad, and then just swap it out whenever you're doing different parts or different grits of glass bead or whatever media you're using. On this thing right here, it's just a Sterilite, a big old Sterilite tub. I figured this one's bigger, you get more circulation in there. So what I'm gonna do now, go ahead and just finish all the plumbing, get the hose that I did over here up there, create that hose on the bottom that does the slurry and kind of moves everything around when it's pumping, and then try to measure it all the way to the top here, get it through, and then reattach it to the actual cabinet. And then after that, I have to finish the air part of the plumbing. So right now we're just doing the water plumbing. So to adapt to that water pump or that slurry pump that I had to go down to Lowe's and pick up this adapter. This is just a 3/4 hose adapter just to a 3/4 regular pipe thread right here. And then I picked up this sprinkler adapter right here to barb, so that way I could get it into this tube. Once I get it into this tube, I'm gonna go up to this T right here. Originally I was gonna use the 1/2 inch T that goes with the 1/2 inch diameter, but this thing looks like it's gonna pretty much be a bottleneck, even though this is going to be the bottleneck right now. I wanted to kind of, once it gets past this bottleneck, I wanted to move as much volume as possible, so I stepped up to a 5/8 T right here. So the 5/8 is going to be a pain in the ass to get into here. I'm gonna have to heat this up and kind of get that thing in and force it in there, but it's going to be a nice tight fit using the 5/8 versus the 1/2. All right, I was able to get that 5/8 barb in here. It took some freaking muscle to kind of get that first one in there, and then I ended up heating it to get the last 1/4 inch on there. So I got it on. This thing's not going anywhere even if I don't clamp it, but what I'm going to do, instead of using cheap worm clamps or any of that, I'm going to do my own little clamp making system using stainless steel wire and this little tool right there that twists it and then overlaps it. If you haven't seen this, check out YouTube. It's a pretty cool device. This thing's like 25 bucks and this is like $10 worth of wire, but this thing is going to come in handy once I make more of these things and use these things as clamps. But definitely a cool tool that I just discovered. So as you can see, that new tool with that stainless steel cable came out really handy and nice, very professional looking. So what you do is you loop it through twice, use that thing to wind it up, and then just evenly distribute the pressure over the circle here, and it basically gives it a nice tight clamp. You flip it over, you squeeze it together, and this thing's not going anywhere unless you cut this thing off. So it's a cool new tool. I'm gonna be doing all the fittings on this project using that, including the air fittings. So I ended up using basically the whole section of hose I bought. I think I bought a 10-foot roll, and pretty much did all the crimps and everything right there, nice and clean. Overall, this should be more than enough. I probably have extra going up to the actual blast cabinet, but I wanted to make sure I had enough to slurry up everything on there once I mount it. So we'll go ahead and mount it and see how it looks. All right, so I went ahead and routed that thing up there through that little grommet I did. Down here, I went ahead and looped it around the actual pump, and I zip tied it down there just to keep it at the bottom here to slurry up everything at the bottom of the base to keep everything in suspension. So pretty much this is all set up right here. I've got this up here all set up, so I'm gonna go ahead and route it through the actual thing now and mount it back onto here, and then handle the air plumbing after that and the electrical. All right, went ahead and connected that pipe right there. This thing is an 8-inch pipe for my application, and it gets down here just enough to clear the top of this so we don't make a big old mess, and we dump all the return water and slurry back into the bottom of the pot. All right, so we got this thing test fitted into here with the new spray gun right here. So I plugged it up. So this thing uses a 1/2 inch. So the airline we're running is actually 3/8 inch coming into here, so it's a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna have to get a 3/8 to 1/2 adapter some sort to fit onto here. So this original regulator I bought right here, I realized it didn't have a bracket or a mount so I can mount it, so I ended up picking up this one right here that comes with this little ring mount, so we can actually mount it onto the side of the cabinet. To mount the regulator, I'm gonna use one of these existing holes right here. I'm gonna have to drill a second one on this side to mount it. I got that thing mounted right there. Had to drill a second hole to get that thing in, but pretty much tightened that thing up with the lock nut. So we got this here. I put the end right here so we could plug the hose in from the wall. This other side is going to end up going to the pedal, so I'm going to have to put the pedal on the other side over here because that's the front side where I'm going to be standing and working. For the hose I'm going to be using this Flexzilla right here. I just picked up a 25-foot piece right here of a 1/4 inch. The main line off the wall or off the compressor is going to be 3/8, but this one we decided to go with 1/4 because we didn't really need that much volume into here, so I could step it down once it gets to the regulator and to the foot pedal that we're going to be using. So on the new hose I bought, it's got 2 ends on it with those 1/4-inch fittings. I'll go ahead and cut those ends. I'll use one end that goes into here, and the second end I'll screw it into here. The rest of the connections I'll use my barb fittings that I have over here to make those, and then clamp them with that clamp maker that I have. So before I make the connections, I wanted to make sure I measure everything out where I got it path and everything, so I can get around here, put it where my foot pedal is, and have enough slack so I can put my foot right here while I'm working. So I marked the 2 spots that I'm gonna cut it. I'll have some extra tubing left over for other stuff if I ever need it. So before I make the connections to the pedal and everything, I'm gonna go ahead and just Teflon these ends, screw them into the 2 termination points, so that way this thing's all twisted correctly onto there. Then I'll plug it into the actual foot pedal with the barb fittings to make sure I have it all correct, and then I'm gonna do the clamps after that so I don't have to twist anything. We were able to make this connections and everything with all the new Teflon tape, did my clamps there, did good wire management or cable management here with some Velcro straps I had all the way up there, connected it to the foot right there or the leg of the thing so it's all nice and organized. So now when I'm not using it, I'll just put it up here or I'll put it back here where I can just keep it all in one piece right here, and then when I need to take it out, I'll take it out and use it. So inside the unit, that hose, I've got that connected here. That was the previous air hose that I had in here. I changed the clamps on it to those new stainless steel self-made clamps right here. For the air line into here, since this thing is like pretty big as far as the diameter goes, I had to actually use one of these hoses right here. I cut a piece of section of it off right there, put it onto here, and then put a barb fitting that fits from here onto there so I could hold that. And then now I've got these into here. I'm gonna have to create those same clamps onto here to kind of make it semi-permanent. All right, plug this thing up and aired it up and everything, and it looks like I made a mistake. I didn't pay attention to the arrow, the direction arrow down here of the air. So right now I've got the air on the wrong side, so it's just bleeding air out. So I'm gonna have to swap the inlet and the outlet here. All right, so I took it back off, and you see that arrow right there that shows the direction of the air. So it needs to come in on this side, and it gets regulated on that side. So for me to keep this up in the same direction, once I flip it back, there's actually another port back here with an Allen plug. We'll take that off, flip the plug and the gauge, and that way we can still keep it upright in the right direction. But other than having that thing backwards, everything works. If I step on this, it moves the air through. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount these little boxes right here. These are just double gang boxes with this right here. So I'm going to do a switch to turn on one of these outlets. So what you can do is on the side of here, you'll see these little tabs on these very basic 77-cent outlets right here. So if you break that tab off, you could actually have these as independent outlets. So I'll end up wiring these to the new cable that I'm going to fish through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch the bottom outlet. So one side I'm going to use for the lights. On this side, I'll use another one doing the same deal, but I'll do the switch for this bottom outlet so I can turn on the pump. The top one I'll just have energized in case I have to plug anything else in here later. And that way it's just a convenience outlet there. So this is what we're going to do. All right, I went ahead and connected the 2 boxes together using these 2 pipes right here with a 1/2-inch PVC conduit in the middle just to keep it together. Once I mount it on the wall, I'll go ahead and wire everything through, get the cable put through here, and then get the outlet over here wired up. On the outlet, what we're going to do is we'll wire the neutral side, which is the white. You can leave that tab there because it's going to still share the same neutral. On the switch side, I want to have that broken right there, that connector I showed earlier, because what happens is I'm going to connect this bottom one to the switch so I can pass the hot through the switch, and then the top one I'm going to have hot all the time because that's going to have power when this thing's plugged in. All right, we got this thing wired up on this side. I got everything working. I put a little bit of electrical tape around the side so the contacts don't make any touching or anything to the metal in here. Pushed all the wire nuts, got everything back, routed the wire over here so we could bring power over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and test this side, make sure everything works, and I'm gonna do this side off camera just to get everything completed, and I'll show you guys the final result when we're done. All right, I was able to test everything, it was working, so I made the terminations out here. Always make these terminations by doing this loop method. You loop from the underside up so it goes clockwise, that loops around, because that's the way you're supposed to do it. You see over here, that little piece right here I kind of hung off, but it's still tucked into there, so that's good. Same with all sides. Also with these twist things, make sure you get a bunch of twists. If you have that little twist tool for the drill, that works best. But after that, we just wrap that with electrical tape because we have all this metal in here. I don't want any of the sides or anything accidentally contacting ever. And then you tuck everything back into the hole right there so that it doesn't short out or touch anything else. Once you get everything mounted up, you want to make sure you visually inspect back here. Make sure that screw didn't penetrate or nick any of the wires back there to short out. And make sure everything is kind of tucked back. Get your needle nose pliers and stuff to kind of help push some of these things back that you can reach. That way it's not in the way, it's not touching, and it's not gonna short out or vibrate. All right, we got this thing on. Everything is nice. One thing you guys can notice is make sure all your screws are in the vertical position when you put these faceplates in. That's the first sign of a hack job or a professional electrician job right there, just noticing those on switch plates. Also, when you're tightening the screws on the side of the outlets, I really recommend picking up some of these Milwaukee kits right here. These are ECX bits, I believe, and they're designed kind of like a flathead, but they also have that square right there in the middle that is designed for electrical work, so you get the torque down on the screw versus using a flathead or a Phillips. So definitely recommend this. Check out the links down in the description for this, as well as all the parts I use on this project. I'll have all the links down in the description of everything that you're going to need for this project. All right, I ended up putting water and whatever's left that I had taken out as far as the media I had in there. That was probably a bad idea because this thing is just full of all the other crap that I had sandblasted over the years, and a lot of it is just floating to the top now. I try to stir it up to see if I get the thing slurried up, but yeah, I just want to get it all in suspension, and then we'll turn it on to test it and send it through the gun to see what it does. So this is the glass bead I'm using right here, is an 80 grit. I think this is good enough for most blasting when we're doing in this vapor blaster, but as far as this thing on the side here, the two boxes act like a actual wrap that you can mount the cord to when you're not using it. So you just wrap it around just for wire management. Other than that, everything looks good. I tested all this stuff and it works pretty good right here for the switch. So we'll go ahead and put something in here and try to clean it and see how it works. All right, I got the slurry test run. Ran into a little bit of issue. So all these corners right here, they're just folded up and there's a big old gap. So I ended up getting a bunch of water spilling all over the floor because it's not draining quickly enough from the top tray that I had put that drain on. So I'm gonna have to figure out something as far as kind of keeping and blocking this water. I might have to put a big old thick layer of silicone and caulk right here on those corners just to seal those up to prevent any leaks. All right, to correct this issue with it leaking on the corners, I went ahead and just caulked up all the edges. It's kind of messy. I wanted to make sure that I covered everything along with those bolts. Went ahead and covered the screws that covered up the electrical right there, so we're good there, along with that screw right here that hangs up right there where the water level might get up past that if it doesn't drain quickly enough. Prior to sealing that, I actually unbolted all these bolts right here, and I tried to lift this whole pan up a little bit just so it would actually be higher on the outside so it channels the water towards the middle more. I went ahead and removed that strainer cup. It came with a drain right there. I'm just gonna have it just drain straight down so it drains faster. I think the issue with it filling up right here was that it wasn't draining fast enough, and then of course the gravity was forcing it to the outside versus going towards the middle there, since the middle is not really angled down or anything. So that's one of the big issues, is it's not sloped down to all drain towards the center. All right, I let this baby dry overnight. Tested it with some water right there, and It ended up sealing pretty good, so no more leaks. So now we can actually test it out and see how this thing does as far as vapor blasting. One of the mods I see online with a lot of the guys that do this, they also have to put this little sheet of plastic here. So what it is when you close it, you want to make it where the water basically rides off this wall back into the tank and it doesn't sit here on the edge with the slurry and all that. When you open the door, it lets everything out. So before we start up this vapor blaster, every time what you want to do is, especially if your thing's been sitting around for a while, just kind of stir it up, get all the media and everything stirred up and into a little suspension so it's not sitting on the ground or on the bottom of the bucket. And then what you want to do is just get it up there in suspension and then turn on the pump to prime it up. So before you turn on, you just want to, so right now it's pretty much primed already from the last time, so it's filling up pretty quickly and I could hear the inside working, so it's working good. So we'll go ahead and get the part in there and test it. Got one of my old IS300 rear calipers. I also have the front one and the whole set. After I took them off to do my Brembo upgrade, this thing's been sitting in a bucket for about 2 years now and it's just gotten all nasty and corroded. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick them in here and see what the vapor blaster can do to these. So this ended up being a pretty good cleanup right there of 20 years worth of brake dust and grime on here. We got the back and on the outsides. The insides here, I was trying to hit it at an angle to try to get some of that out, but it was taking a lot longer in there, so I kind of stopped just to see what it looked like on the outside. But overall, looks pretty good. It's really hard to get these cast iron calipers really clean anyways. Aluminum and other softer metals are going to be much easier to clean up, but yeah, you just got to work at it to get all this old grime off just to give it this nice silver metal, bare metal finish that originally came with. Overall, everything's working just as planned. One of the things I noticed is when it's spinning the slurry around on the bottom there, that tube that's kind of aerating everything on the bottom is kind of splashing against the wall, so I'm getting a little bit of splashing and overspray out here of the water. One of the things that over time you're going to get a lot of stuff that floats to the top, especially if you're degreasing and doing all that stuff. All the oil and grease will get to the top, so you might need to get a little strainer or something just to kind of strain out the water from the actual stuff that's floating on top, just to kind of keep it cleaner. So I ended up turning on the vacuum system right here, the dust collection vacuum system. It did collect some moisture and some other gunk in there, but the main benefit of that is it actually sucks away a lot of that mist and other dust in the air while we're working. So next test I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get these little parts off the caliper. I bought one of these little baskets down at Dollar Tree, and that's a very affordable place to find these. I was initially looking on Amazon and I was like, wait a minute, I saw something like this at Dollar Tree. It works really well. It lets all the stuff go through, where you can actually just put this down and you won't drop anything inside your actual cabinet. So it's very good for small bolts and everything. So we'll go ahead and test this out and see how these things turn out. So I took it outside, rinsed it off with a little bit of water just to get all that sandblast off. This thing right here, it ended up, I didn't get it as good because it was a pain in the ass to get everything off just because of the angles. It wouldn't get it off. This little piece got most of the dirt and paint and grime off of it. You still see a little bit of black there, but if you spend a little bit more time on those edges, you get those pretty easily. These I didn't spend too much time on. I just got the edges. I didn't want to waste too much time there. Just get a little bit of stuff off of here. Overall, everything else turned out pretty good. The caliper here is all dried off. You can see on the inside, once we rinse everything off, you can still see it is clean. It's actually clean to the touch. It's just that all that baked in grease and brake dust and everything from 20 years worth of use just got stuck in there. But overall, very good wet vapor blasting. This is the next test case we have right here. The caliper looks like it just came out of the Titanic. This is a front caliper from the IS300. I think this was a remanufactured one that had been stripped of all its coating when they remanufactured it, so it was just corroding to hell when I had it, and it's gotten worse just sitting in that bucket. The bracket right here looks like an original bracket. It's been painted. There's a couple layers of paint on here, so we'll go see what this thing can do through this baby. Alright, ran into a little snafu. That little hose that I did where I looped it around the thing and I just zip tied it with one zip tie, it eventually vibrated loose and it came up and it just sprayed everywhere. So I just spent the last 10-15 minutes wiping everything off the ground, and on my clothes and everything it just sprayed everywhere. So luckily I have the switch right here to turn it off real quick when that happened, but it wasn't that bad. But so I went ahead, reattached it, and I drilled a hole at the end of the thing and I zip tied it to the bottom so it doesn't go anywhere. So this is the outcome of the bracket and that rusty ass caliper right there. It is a big pain in the ass to get that. See right here, I got it down where I was starting to remove a lot of that corrosion, but just hitting it on the surface with it just normally, it wasn't removing enough. As you can see right there on the bolts and everything, the bolts got really clean. They were pretty rusted, the heads of them, but these are pretty clean after we blasted it. Over here, you can see there was a layer of paint, both black and silver. So we were trying to take that off right there, but ideally in the future, if I was gonna strip it from paint and other stuff, I would just use chemicals before I put in the blaster, just to make sure I get most of that off, and I'm just doing metal prep. On the machine itself, originally I started around 70 psi. That wasn't really doing much. I upped it to 90 psi and it was kind of working, so I'm gonna go ahead and try 100 psi to see how much better it is. As far as the air compressor I'm using this Ingersoll Rand 60-gallon right here. This thing, when I'm blasting, this thing's actually constantly running just to keep up. It charges up to about 150 psi and then starts recharging around 120. When I'm actually constantly blasting, this thing basically just runs the whole time. So you're gonna need something like this or larger to do any kind of significant blasting. So on the last test run I did with this thing, I ended up turning up to 100 psi, and I was able to get a lot of this corrosion right here. I had to work pretty hard with it. Once you get it catching and it gets a layer off, it'll start moving pretty quickly, but there's still a bunch of corrosion right there that it wouldn't get off yet. So you actually have to just work your way all the way down with that media. So we were just playing with these calipers just for fun and just to see what we can do with it. In real life, if I were to refurb these calipers, I definitely would not spend the time on these or the effort to try to get all this corrosion off. You could pick up a set of these basically remanufactured brand new where they blasted all already and get everything back to the bare metal for like $133 on eBay for a whole set with the bracket. So it's not even really worth your time. If I were to powder coat them, I would definitely pick up a set of remanufactured ones before I mess with these. And also after blasting it, you actually have to do whatever you need to do right away, just because look at how quickly it flash rusts on all those edges once we cleaned it all up and get it down to the bare iron. This thing just pretty much corrodes right when it hits the air because of all that moisture. All right guys, thanks for sticking all the way to the end. If you guys need all the parts and the parts list I used on this project, go ahead and check the links down in the description. I'll list everything we used for this project and everything you're gonna need to convert your sandblaster into a vapor blaster. Hey guys, thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this video on converting our old Harbor Freight sandblaster into a vapor blaster with all the different modifications we did. If you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel. Turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.